What's up, guys? Iceman here. Welcome to Chilling Tales. Appreciate y'all for coming by. Like this video if you will, subscribe to the page, and paw that bell so you're notified next time I post a video. And blessings to my patrons. Links in the description below. So this one today is a terrifying story, and I'm not even kidding you guys when I say this. It's one of the worst things that I can imagine happening to you. All right. I don't know how this guy did it. But nonetheless, he was 25 years of age, fishing out in Alaska. He just met this beautiful young woman who he described had strawberry hair. And there's actually a redemptive quality about this story that you'll have to wait for till the end. But this guy met this lady, and they really enjoyed their time together. They went whale watching, and they just knew that they had something going on. But it wasn't long into the relationship at all, this very new budding relationship, where this guy decided to go fishing with his buddies. They went salmon fishing along the river shore near the Kenai Peninsula, I think is where it was. I'll link this attack in the in the comments of this video. So he's out there fishing with his buddies, just having a grand old time. His dog's with him, a beautiful lab. Just these guys in their mid-20s having a damn good time. The beautiful sky, the beautiful wind, the smell of the water. They were just wearing t-shirts. It was midsummer. The weather was perfect. But when the trip started to come to a close, they decided to pack up their goodies and start walking back down to the lodge. And on their way, this guy was all by himself. He sort of got ahead of his buddies. His dog started acting up. She started whimpering a little bit and growling. And he knew that there was something off because she doesn't normally act like that. To his surprise, what was there, not far down the path, right around the curve, was this hulking grizzly bear. Just its head sort of low like this. Massive hump on its back, just sort of swaying its head. This tremendous creature. And of course, this guy knew that you have to be cautious around him. And he ended up quickly veering the other way with his dog. And they got away from the animal. It's not like they ran away, they just sort of evaded it. Obviously, if you run away, it's probably going to chase you. So you generally don't want to do that. So he and his dog start making their way down the trail. And all of a sudden, he hears some crunching behind him and swaying of the trees. There's all these adders and spruce trees all over the place. It was a very, very dense forest where this trail kind of weaved around. And he looks behind him and he sees these trees just moving. And he knows exactly what it is. And at that point, chills ran down his spine. He knew that when a bear follows you, when it stalks you, you're in trouble. Generally, when they see humans, they'll try to avoid them. Attacks often happen when you surprise a bear. Especially in Alaska when you're going down these tight trails and all of a sudden you surprise the damn thing and it comes bursting out of the bush and takes you down and attacks. It just sort of tries to neutralize the target. And oftentimes people die in these situations. But this guy knew it was bad. And the dog started acting up again and he sort of grabbed his dog and they started making their way down faster. And to their surprise, ahead of them, he saw something even larger coming at him. He described it as being fast as a missile, and how there just wasn't any time to think. Like, he was trained to deal with these things, right? Most people are who spend some time in Alaska. But he said that it was happening so fast, it was just so real. It was almost surreal, the situation. So this bear, like, you think, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to play dead, I got to fight back, depending on the scenario. Obviously, in this scenario, I mean, it's a grizzly. To my understanding, generally, you're going to want to play dead. But this thing hit him before he could even do anything. He explained it that this massive skull of this bear just got bigger and bigger and bigger as it was coming at him. And he saw the massive yellow eyes just glowing with fury, as he described it. And it just crashed into him. And then the next thing he remembers, as crazy as this is, I've never really heard of this before. He said he was fading in and out of consciousness while he was being dragged down the trail and into the thicket. He just remembers the ground just passing by him. Woo, 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 woo. And this bear was like, it's momentum, I think. And this probably happened in a matter of seconds. This is often how these stories go. I've heard a lot of these bear attack stories at this point. That's what this channel's about. I've covered many of them here. And it's often the case where it's only a couple seconds, but it feels like hours. And this guy was just like, the momentum of this bear, I think is what it was just dragging him over the gravel and the rocks and the stone and the roots, just biting into him, just wrestling into him. And then they came to a halt. And the bear just started digging into him, just shoulder to shoulder, just digging and thrashing him around. The dog was just barking up a storm. And he faded in and out of consciousness, this and that, just the snarls, the drool, the thrashing of the teeth. These things are so powerful, especially a grizzly. And sure enough, what it was that was behind him was the cubs. And right before the attack happened, he noticed that he was in probably one of the worst positions you could be in Alaska when you're out in the wild, and that's between a sow grizzly and her cubs. It's just crazy. So he was fading in and out of consciousness. He heard his buddies yelling for him, just yelling his name, yelling for him. Because they knew something went amok. In and out of consciousness. The guy passes out. And then he returns, his body's just mangled. He wakes up, and the bear's gone. But not for long. He hears his buddies yelling to him. This might be the most dire event in this attack. And I know that if I were this guy, I don't know if I have the fortitude that he has. In fact, I don't think I do. For those of you who've been watching my videos, some of you who've been watching like all of them, you'd know me a little better. You'd know that I had an incident or two myself. It wasn't a bear attack, but I had a weightlifting accident. I was bench pressing away. I was a strong guy, bench pressing 365 pounds at 6'4". I mean, I'm still pretty strong, but I got surgery. I ripped a pec tendon. I got it back on there. But then I had an infection and an infection after that. 3 surgeries, just unbelievable. Just the hell that put me through, or the hell that I allowed for it to put me through, was miserable. And it was a lot to deal with in my world. But then I hear stories like this. I mean, this guy, to an extent, can be an inspiration for many of us. But I don't deal well with regret. Like, I look back on my weight incident, and I know I was showing off. I know I was throwing that weight like I shouldn't be. I didn't warm up properly. And now I get to pay for it for the rest of my life. And what happened with this guy in this moment was a similar thing. Only according to my evaluation, and the evaluation of many I know, was far, far worse than what happened to me. So he's lying here mangled after the bear attacks him. The bear left him. And that's often the case with these mother bears. Like I said, they generally just want to neutralize the target. That doesn't mean they want to kill it. They just want it to stop fighting back, stop making noise, and then she can get away with her cubs. And likely that's what just happened. Until it didn't. His buddies are yelling to him, and he's there mangled, just woke up. What felt like forever getting ripped up by that bear. He yells back. I'm over here. I don't know what he said, but he yelled back to his buddies. And according to him, that's what caused the bear to come back, most likely. The bear heard his voice. These things are very smart. You know, people undervalue the intelligence of this bear. I'm not saying this guy was. I mean, he was in and out of consciousness, you know? Like, he probably could barely even think straight. Of course, he's going to yell for help. I mean, he needed it. He was probably bleeding to death. You know, what are you going to do? I probably would have done the same thing in his situation. You just got mangled by a freaking grizzly bear. Your buddies are who knows where, but I mean, they might pass you and you might never be found. You're going to starve to death, or you're not going to starve to death, but you're going to bleed to death. Obviously, a search group's going to come after you, but I mean, you're going to be mangled. The bear's going to come back. I mean, there's endless possibilities. All, as far as I see it, as to why he yelled back. And that's what he did. Yelled back to his buddies. He needed to get out of there. And that's the best he could do. But as soon as he did that, this bear heard him, and it came storming back out of the woods, right on him again. And like I said, they're smart. It probably walked away with the cubs. It ran toward its cubs. They're so perceptive. You know, these things are very intelligent. It probably knew exactly where his body was, in accordance to where its cubs were at that point. And then it heard something come out of the body, or heard the little whimper or whatever the guy made, the yelling to the friends. And the bear knew that her job wasn't done yet. You know? I mean, for all it knew, that was a taunt or something. The guy was going to get up and try to get the cub. I don't know what these animals are thinking, but they're smart. It probably knew that was coming right from his location, and who knows what the guy was going to do, so it's going to go over there and attack him again. But here's why I say that would be my biggest regret. But this guy is such an inspiration. I mean, that's just what life is, right? It's endless, seemingly endless choices. All these variables. That's what scares me about it. We're all just one sliver, one slip, one mistake away from death all the time. Isn't it crazy? I mean, even when we're driving down the road, if you think about it, you're going like with oncoming traffic, and all it takes is just a little boop, little tilt of the wheel, just a little jolt, and boom, you could have a head-on collision. You're going 60, they're going 60, that's 120 mile, boom! You're mangled for the rest of your life, or dead, who knows? That's just one of the scary things about life. I mean, I guess to an extent we could consider it a blessing how it does end no matter what, right? No one's escaped out of here alive. Not even Jesus Christ, come to think of it, without resurrection. Well, he was resurrected later, but I mean, yeah, you see what I'm saying? I mean, to my knowledge, to my faith. And there's Elijah who's taken up in heaven. But I mean, beside those two scenarios that some people believe, some people don't, I mean, nobody gets out of here alive. Right? Whether or not you believe in that stuff, I mean, those are just two examples of, I mean, yeah, who knows? But I mean, with everyone else, and this includes me, at least we're going to be out of here soon. Or maybe those mistakes aren't going to matter anymore. And maybe things can be learned from those mistakes. Or just those occurrences, which is what this guy gets into. God bless his heart. What an inspiration to us all. But when the bear came back, after he yelled back to his buddies, it hurt him, obviously, and attacked him again. And boom, this is the time where it wrapped its jaws around his face like this, and it squeezed. He said he could just hear the crunch and the cracks. It squeezed his head, it wrapped its jaws just like this around his face, and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, just crushing his skull to an extent. His eyes just destroyed. Then it jolted, thrashed, chopped him up, went after his shoulders everywhere. And the guy said that he just saw this blue light. And apparently he had a background in mental health or something, psychology, something like that. And he said that he knew that that was a moment that people kind of fall into in traumatic situations where it's like an escapism of the sort. To relieve yourself, like you just, it's like it's so painful and traumatic what you're going through. He just saw this like blue light or something, and he said it was peaceful for a moment. And this was the moment where the bear blinded him in both eyes. So that happened. Eventually, the bear left. And the guy wakes up. His friends are trying to help him, this and that. The dog, I think, ran back to the lodge, and I think it startled some folks and it got some help. Like they knew something was off and they went out searching for the party. I don't really know the details exactly, but the guy was taken to the hospital, and it was several days just being worked on this and that, worked on this and that. Coming to, coming out, coming to, coming out. He said during that attack he thought of his mother. He said there was an episode after that whole thing where the bear crushes his face where he could almost choose life or death. And he said that he chose life. And he said that he made the decision not to regret that choice ever again. Like, you know how you could go back, you'd be like, oh, I should have just let it kill me. Now I got to live mangled for the rest of my life. Now I got to live blind for the rest of my life. He said he made the decision never to regret that. Like somehow he must have had to fight for life, I think is what it was, while this bear was just eating him alive. And he said he chose life. He said he thought of his mother and how his mother, he said some sort of primordial sense of wanting to stay alive. Like, you know, your mother, she nurtures you, she cares for you. You want to sort of return her the favor. You want to live, you know what I mean? You want to be well, no matter what the circumstance. Even if it's really dire like this one. But he said that he thought of his mother. And that sort of gave him a drive to live. Remember, he was only 25 years old when this happened. Man, that's just crazy. So, at the hospital, this strawberry hair colored blonde, you know, this strawberry blonde chick who he just started seeing and had a budding relationship, she comes in. He's mangled. His face is all wrapped up. He can only write. He can barely talk. He writes down a little note. He says, crazy. And she reads that and she says, I know. These people just started dating. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine when you start dating somebody? I mean, they must have really liked each other. I'll get to that in just a minute. She must have really, she's a great woman. Yeah, she's a gem. She's a fantastic lady. Compassion, everything else, but I'm sure he is as well. But he wrote that down. These are just assumptions, all right? But he wrote that down on a piece of paper, and she said, I know. Imagine what was going through her mind. This guy that you just started seeing, and look at him. He's blind. Just the alteration of what you had in mind for your future or whatever. I mean, but this gets better. I mean, sometimes you can use these things, well, you make the most of them. And this has been an inspiration for many, including myself. This makes me feel a little, it brings some perspective. It's like, wow, I do have a lot to be thankful for, don't I? Even after my gym incidents. I mean, I got some owies on my other side too, on my left side. I'm left-handed. But they all derived from that first accident. But he's in the bed, he writes her, it's crazy, and then he writes her something else. He writes her, I'm blind. And then she says, I know. She probably heard it from the doctors, I don't know, but the guy was blind. And they must have had a discussion. Something along the lines of, look at the position I'm in right now. I need to adjust. We could be friends or whatever for now, but I'm not in the position to like start a relationship or whatever. I mean, for one, could you imagine thinking that in this guy's position? Like, from my perspective, it's like, I like to just take what I can get. I mean, who knows? If I was attracted to this chick and I'd still want her to stay with me. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe when you go through that, I mean, maybe you're compassionate for them. You're like, oh, I don't want them to have to deal with me right now. I mean, look what I'm going through and who knows what my future is going to look like. Or maybe it's just, I can't even see. This relationship is like not even on my mind anymore. Like, I can't even see this girl. I mean, I have no idea. I don't know what went through the guy's mind. I'm just trying to retrace what would I think. But they talk about that and they kind of go their separate ways. But here's what's crazy. Just unbelievable. A year later, he returns to go fishing with his buddies. This guy's blind now. All right. He starts to embrace life in how he can. I mean, he made that commitment. Like I said, during the attack, after the really bad things happened, he promised himself. He was like, I'm going to live, and I'm not going to regret that decision to live. I'm not going to wallow in bitterness. He said, this was his words later on. He said, the bitterness could do far more damage to me than that bear has ever done. Could you let that sink in for a minute? I mean, the bear took his sight away. You know, but this guy's saying that bitterness can be more destructive than even that. Just how impactful that is. I would like to tell this guy thank you for being strong. Thank you for encouragement, for the story, for fighting through. Because it gives me perspective. And I think that a lot of us could relate. Let me know in the comments below if you guys can relate. Does this give you perspective? Does it give you hope? I mean, if he can do that, maybe we could do it too, you know? And I mean, I still have my sight. That's a pretty big thing that a lot of people take for granted, including myself. But, so a year later, he goes out fishing with his buddies again, blind. So I don't know. He adjusted, you know? He said he still goes and has fires. He got into music. He plays guitar. I think he's had a couple of CDs and stuff. films, documentaries, maybe movies. I don't know. I mean, career. You know, he's doing stuff. He's probably doing more than most of us. This guy's driven. But he returns back a year later. So he's like 26 now. He goes fishing. He plans something with the girl again. She's still up for hanging out. Probably more than that. I'll get that in just a minute. He's like, okay, but first I got to go fishing with my buddies. So he puts off hanging out with her and he fishes with his buddies. He catches like a 40-pound trout or salmon or something. Some steelhead, I think is what they call it. Beautiful fish. I mean, imagine what this guy's probably doing. He probably cleans his fish. He probably cooks it. He probably baits his lure. He probably does everything, you know, without his sight. It's just crazy. And then he hangs out with this girl after that. He just said it was, what a thing. He caught this beautiful fish. He said it was sort of his redemption of his first, because this is after the whole bear attack. This is a year after he returns to the same scene. He talked of it something like a redemption story or something like that. Like a conquering of something, of, you know, what it took from you the first time, something like that. Said he went back and he got a beautiful fish and he got a beautiful girl, because what happened is they ended up getting married. I mean, I don't know the details, but he ended up being with this girl, you know? He started a family with her. They had a couple of kids. This is stuff that was going through his mind when he was getting attacked by the bear. This stuff just flashed through his mind. He's like, I'm never going to be able to have kids. It's like, I'm going to die. It's like, I'm never going to be able to see. I'm never going to be able to move. Who knows what was going through his mind? All reasonably so. But he ended up having kids with this girl. He's a father, career-driven guy, all sorts of stuff he's doing. The bear took a sight, but I mean, look at all the growth that took place or whatever. Look at how much he's done anyway. Do it anyway. I'm going to link an article to this story in the comments of this video. But I mean, let me know what you guys think about that in the comments below. Wow, what a thing. It's got to be, I mean, that's just terrifying to me. You know, like I've heard a lot of bear stories. I've heard of a lady losing her arms. You know, there's actually been another guy, I think, that lost his sight. It's a rare occasion. You know, the guy got his freaking face ripped off. All the surgeries, this and that. But I mean, this one has got to take the cake. It's to one of the worst I've ever heard. And just the strength that it takes to dig yourself out of that. Like this guy did. But anyway, I'll post the article in the comments and let me know your thoughts on this stuff. Like this video if you will, subscribe to the page, and I'll see you all tomorrow with more chilling tales from the Iceman.